I too had a brother that died prematurely. And so I understand what it's like losing a sibling. You know them longer than your parents or anybody. So I also too wanted to present you, and you have a car, so I know that you can present each of you with the G. This is the G plate. So we have some. Anybody who wants that, and I had already decided that there are several ways we can send you the original. We could tell you where we had the G clay done, or if you just want to go through us, all we would do is just charge you for the what we paid for and the shipping. So anybody who would like to have that, we have two of them, one in each home, and the interesting thing about this, no matter which, if I point this way, he's looking at you. If I point this way, he's looking at you. If I point this way, he's always looking at you.
I talk to Bryan when I look at my painting.
Yes, we say good night. Don't you be eyeballing me. Don't you be eyeballing me. Thank you, David. That's awesome.
All right, Adam, you can take it over. Gary Easton.
I'm going to hug him for you.
Cheryl wants to know when the dartboard version comes out. Thanks so much, Dave.
I brought your giveaway and your shirt down here.
And your giveaway's right there.
Yeah.
So that one's mine.
Yeah. Take it over. Getting breezy now. Too breezy. Okay. You're okay. Yeah. The sun goes down.
We will make you. Give me your address.
Dave and Sherry, since you're up here anyways, we would like to invite you to come and select something from the giveaway table. Over here to my right. And while you're looking at items to take home with you, talking to you? Yeah, you, both of you. We'd like to call up Gary Easty. Gary Easty to the stage. So you're, if you feel like saying anything, you're free to. If not, mosey on over to the giveaway table and pick out something to re-gift.
Since we've been doing the Wachoni Family Camp, this will be our 17th year this year, and Bryan has been our lead man on our powwow committee, and so I would get these telephone calls. He would just call up, some of those short ones that we talk about so often, and he'd want to know, have we got the headman yet? Okay, that's all I need, goodbye. He'd call again, well, have you got the head dancer? Who's the head dancer? Well, why'd you ask them? Why didn't you ask so-and-so? And we'd go round and round, but it was always a great conversation, and, excuse me, I won't go into the story about how Bryan and I finally clicked, but it was one of those that, sometimes Bryan initially didn't talk to me, wasn't interested in anything I had to say, even though I was part of the Wachoni team. And one day it clicked at the first Sing to the Mountains that Jonathan sponsored down in Oklahoma. And so if anybody wants to know that, I'll share it with you, elsewhere instead of taking time to do now. But Bryan, again, he was a very special brother, and I appreciated I learned so much about powwow because I became the guy that in the Washington, Oregon area that connected with the local people, and so we have a lot of local people involved in that powwow, both traditional as well as believers. And so it was a great time interacting with him over the powwow each year. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to call Mr. Bill Gooey to the stage.
We can't find him.
What? I can see him. Just not to self-promote or anything, but these gifts are from the family. Just saying thanks. Saying thanks to you, bro. Feel free to take it home on the mic if you want.
I'm not going to tell one of Bryan's jokes, but one thing with him and Richard, the difference was Bryan did the same jokes all the time. Richard had new jokes because you would tell him a joke and he would steal it. You'd tell him a joke and then he'd be on stage 20 minutes later acting like, hey, look at my new joke. You know? And Bryan never did that. He just did the same old jokes. Bryan really helped me when we did our powwows and as I was learning to dance and just encouraged me, you know, and joked around. And we were up in Colorado powwow, and he comes up and he goes, "You're the only one I know here." I'm like, "Really?" And he goes, "So all my jokes are going to be at you, nothing personal." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Because I was still not comfortable, you know, being out there doing that. And I shared with the people at the table, there was my favorite memory of Bryan was at the Turner powwow. Different people flew in at different times, and so Richard would send people to get people. And Richard sent Daniel in their old Ford Courier. And I don't know who here has ever seen it, but it was nice. And the story was Daniel shows up at the airport, Bryan's there with his stuff, and he tells him, "Go get something else. I'm not going in that. Come back." And then eventually he got in with him and came to the powwow. And then a couple days later we were headed up to Richard's and Catherine's for the after. And here they were in the Courier going up toward Portland. They had the windows down, and it was like they filled up the whole thing. And one out one window, one out the other window, and they're just like all stoic looking. So that's my favorite thing with Bryan. So I never had to spend a night in a room with him or anything like that. So.
All right, D. Tony. Come on down. people don't know this, but one time Bryan was carless, rideless. What do you say? Without car challenge.
Car challenged.
And he was living with us in Tucson at the time, and he had to go back and forth to Los Angeles for the pals and all kinds of stuff. And Dee sold him a car for $1. Totally saved his life. That car ended up getting completely eaten by rats. And I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that.
Maybe you should have saved it.
Yeah, I should have saved it. Asked him for $5 or something. But anyway, Catherine, do you want to call you up if you want to take the mic? Maybe. Oh, he's next.
Oh, yay.
Sure.
Hey, Adam, put me down for one. I gotta tell one. Okay. I got a couple of he's too cool.
The funny joke that I know about Bryan, I honestly, sincerely cannot tell you, and we'll just leave it at that. I'm serious. But he was very good to our family in the way that he showed up. He showed up so fully, so completely, and really legitimately mentored a couple of my sons did not have the privilege of knowing and interacting with him, but two of my sons did, and this is one of them.
Yeah, so Bryan was one of my dad's very best friends. I got to hang out with him a lot, and he didn't teach me shit. I'm just kidding. Sorry, kids. He was really good at teaching without like telling you that that's what he was doing. Like he would hold the mirror up for you and sort of have you explore yourself. And I love that about him. I got to travel with him a lot, and so I went to Europe with him one time, 2 times. And we're in this family invited us over, so we go and have dinner with them. And really nice couple, and we're all lined up. They live in this old fort, like a garrison, so it's all super old and made of stone, and they provide this really delicious meal, and the wife cooks for it, and Bryan's sitting right here, and the wife is sitting right here, I'm sitting right here. And Bryan leans over and we all start, I looked at, I was like, what the f*** are you doing, man? And the host is so indignant and just like staring at him appalled. And he starts laughing, and I'm cracking up. And he gets up, and he walked over to the windowsill, and he's dying laughing. I'm dying laughing. I go over there, I was like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, that was supposed to be a squeaker. That's like the only time I ever saw Bryan get embarrassed. It was good.
I was worried. I was like, what if nobody tells me car story?
I went to Switzerland with Bryan, and there was a bunch of us in a van, and we're going to a show, and we get out and we stop, and we all pile out to go buy some waters, and Bryan gets out and his luxurious hair, and then he goes and lays down in the park, so we all pile back in, and we get in there's some teenagers, and we get in the way back, and one of the girls, Tanya, she's like, "Ugh, what is that? Ugh, ugh," and we all jump out like, it smells like poop, what's going on? And Bryan gets out, and he kind of, I call it, can I swear again? Is that okay? I call it the old man shitty walk, the way that Brightcloud walk. So he gets out backwards out of that van, and he's got dog poop all up in his hair, his luxurious hair. And Tiana, like, she throws up. She looks over here, and Bryan takes off down to, there's a creek, and so he's got like, he's got to do his old man shitty down the creek there. So he makes it down, and like, he's trying to get it to poop out of his hair, but he can't do it. So I go down there with him, and it was the first and only time I've helped another man get poop out of his head. I don't know. And so then my dad comes up, and so there's a bridge over the creek, and my dad comes up, and he's funny, right? So he said, "My name is Bryan. I am now calling myself shit in his hair." I apologize for swearing so much. I didn't mean to.
I'm scared to call anybody else. Namar, come on down. Hey.
So tall. Hello, everyone. My name is Namar Ray Newson. My first name starts with an N, not an L. And I have 2 R's, not 2 A's and then an R. Yeah, so, all right. Yeah. Okay, so here's my Bryan story. Now, Bryan, he was somebody that I very much wanted to meet because, as some of you know, I went to the same seminary that Richard Twiss, Randy Woodley, Terry LeBlanc, Wendy Peterson, a few of the other Nate's people. I went to the same seminary as they did, and that's how I met them. Richard had reached out to me, and he told me that he wanted me to volunteer at family camp. So it was through there where I ended up meeting many other people who have welcomed me into their family, right? Right? And so I met all these great people. Yeah, the only black son, and I'm proud to say that I am very well the black sheep. Right. I'm the black sheep of a few families in here. All right, so I very much wanted to meet Bryan as I met these other great people. And I'm telling you, for the first 2 years of knowing Bryan, he would not speak to me. He would not look at me. I would even intentionally try to get into his way so that I could acknowledge him and make him acknowledge me so that we can talk. Wouldn't do it. He just kind of looked the other way. And so that was for 2 years. And then finally in the next year, all of a sudden, I became the primary target of all of his black jokes. Every black joke, and these are dirty jokes, every black joke that he had, he put it on me. And so, knowing native humor, that became my badge of honor. Like, yes, finally. So when, again, as I got closer to Bryan, I came to learn from him, because he and I would talk a bit. I came to learn that the while that he was not speaking to me or looking at me, he was waiting to see how I would respond. Because Bryan had a way of doing that. He would do things just to see how you would respond, just to see if you were a serious person or if you were someone he can relate to and so forth. So that's how that happened. And then I ended up being a volunteer and a dancer at all of his powwows that he would have in Pasadena and in Santa Fe Springs. And then I would get involved in his charity endeavors, trying to raise money for the Rezes up in South Dakota and so forth, Standing Rock. And I would help him set up his powwows, I would help him clean up his powwows, and he would treat me to dinner every time. Every time, he treated me to dinner. So we did that, we got good there, and we had a lot of great sweats together. We shared a lot of deep things. What's said in the sweat stays in the sweat, so I can't say it here. Right, so that was great, that was wonderful. He was the MC at my wedding. You know, he was the MC there, and he very graciously, wonderfully did that for me. Now, yeah, and then here's where it gets really deep. Now, when my ex-wife, when she divorced me, I was very, very depressed. I was very devastated. I was at the lowest point of my life. I really was. Some of you already know that. I was at the lowest point in my life. And so I talked to Bryan over the phone, and I'm telling him what's going on, and he was very, very nonchalant. You know, one-word responses, okay, all right, bye. You know, that was it. And I didn't mind it because I know Bryan, and I was just glad that he was listening to me. You know, he was a listener when I needed a listener. So after that happened, the very next day, and I mean the very next day, around 24 hours later, it was around the same time where I had called him or talked to him on the phone the previous day. He called me, I answered the phone, and he says, Namar. Yeah, hey Bryan. And he says, I've been praying for you all night. Right? The whole night, he said, I've been praying for you all night. Now here I am, remember the previous day, I'm thinking, you know, very nonchalant, not saying nothing, not caring at all. He calls me and says, I was praying for you all night. I didn't sleep because I was in prayer for you. And to what many of you have already said, Bryan, he wasn't the type to tell you that he loved you. He wasn't the type to tell me that he loved me. He was that old school kind of guy. But he showed me all the time that he loved me very deeply. He didn't have to say it. I just felt it. I just knew it. This man loved me. He was there for me when I was in the greatest day of my life, and he was there for me when I was in the worst, lowest point of my life. And he dedicated himself to being in prayer for me, to give me that visual support that I needed. And so I felt when I became the target of his black jokes, I knew that he liked me. Right? But when he had treated me to those dinners, when he talked on the phone with me, when he talked to me about preaching, when he talked to me about writing, you know, I've been active in ministry. He was the love and support that went deeper than what I could have ever asked for. And so, you know, I've been in ministry now for almost 15 years, and he's been one of the founding fathers to help me get started in ministry with Native folks. And so the kind of research in the ministry that I do now is that I study and I write about and I speak about Black Indians, you know, Afro-Native Americans, African Americans with Native ancestry and heritage, like myself. And historical context connections between Afro-Americans and Native Americans. And I speak about it, you can, on Good Medicine Way, find out. He was one of the guys who inspired me to do that. He was one of the guys who encouraged me to do that. And he told me personally, he said, write a story. He said, tell a story. And because of that, I got 3 books that I'm trying to write right now. You know, and I can promise you that once I finally do release my first book, on that page, that dedication, I'm gonna say dedicated to Bryan Brightcloud. So that's the impact that he had on me. You know, in ministry, as a Black Indian, as a servant, to my brethren, to the people that I love, and I just want to say thank you very much, you know, Bryan. Thank you for letting me be the target of your black jokes. Thank you for saying things that would embarrass any other black man who did not know you. Thank you for saying the kind of things to me that would make another black man want to fight you. And I promise you, it was God ordained. Because it had to be me. Those other black guys, they wouldn't have took it. I'm telling you. So, thank you all very much. Thank you, Bryan. And yes, one of the most beautiful people that I ever know. And I promise the work that I do from here on out, I'm going to tell everyone who was inspired by me that I was inspired by him. Thank you. Oh.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Is Joe Lopez in the house? Joe Lopez. You know, this video is being recorded for posterity. Forever and ever. Show it to our great grandkids. Diane. C? Say Diane C. Melissa.
That's better. I never really got to know Bryan because, like Namar, he never really had anything to do with me. I would see him at Wachoni Powwow every year, and he was the best MC I've ever seen. And I'll miss him a lot this year. I really learned a lot from him, and he taught me how to laugh at myself, and he taught me how to have confidence in myself. And one thing that he always said that has always stuck with me whenever I get nervous to say anything like today is share your story. He always said that, and so that's what I do now. I share my story, and this is part of my story. So.
Make it up, dude.
I don't have to, I got it.
You can, it's up to you. I don't want to put you on the spot, all right?
So pushy. I gotta behave myself, you don't know me yet. Okay, so I was thinking I have maybe two things. The first one might be a lie, or maybe not a lie, but a mistruth. So I was thinking, okay, so I have stories, but I save them for times, right? And I let them go, and they do their whatever they're going to do. And so, in 2000, I was in Tibet, and then this is where the mistruth maybe, I don't know, because I never
followed up on it, but I'll let it do its thing. And I was there just praying, and it was just laying some groundwork for other people to do the one we follow's work. And so I was in a monastery, in Sarah Monastery, sitting with some monks, and we're having tea, and they were looking at me. They're like, where are you from? What do you, you're not like a normal American that shows up, It's like, oh, I'm, a native from America. And then they told me about how there were other natives that came the year before that drummed with them. And I never, like I said, I never asked anyone, but I'm assuming, because I think that was part of some of your dad's work of being, and maybe that was him. I don't know if they were in Tibet. Maybe that was Richard. I don't know, but I don't know the story on that side. This is my side of, and so lie, mistruth. Anyway, but that work that that came from his spirit, like, lives in us. And so that's that. And then I met him a couple of times, and the last time I met him, it was at a Foursquare thing, and there was all these people around him, and I was like, oh, like, I don't know if you remember me. I kind of like, if I do a good job, you don't remember me, kind of thing. Like, that's kind of what aspiration, I guess. And he's like, oh yeah. It's like, we were in rehab together, right? And I was like, yeah, okay. Those are my two things. Heichka.
Please come. So the next person I only have written here is the axe.
Hey everybody. How are you guys? I want to say something before I say something about Bryan. I want to address something that Jonathan Miracle said upstairs about the pastor that told him he had to leave his culture behind. I'm sorry that he said that to you. And for anybody who's been damaged by the white man, as you can tell, I'm very white. But I love people, and I love to love on hurting people. And if somebody tells you that you have to leave your culture for Christ, that is the most un-Christ-like thing they can tell you. The only thing Christ tells you is to love one another and to leave your sin behind. He doesn't tell you that you have to leave who you are behind. Because if you're native, you're native. You're not white, you're not black, you're not brown. You are who you are. So I'm sorry that you had that struggle. And I was touched to hear that, so I'm sorry that you went through that. But remember, if somebody tells you have to leave who you are, leave that person behind and find somebody else. So anyway, so Bryan, we go back a little ways. I met Bryan at Church on the Way, Foursquare, before Y2K, if anybody remembers what Y2K is. And, Bryan, I didn't fight to get into his circle. We just kind of clicked. And but this is the kind of person that Bryan is. So we, I think around 2000, was it 2000, we started working for Eagle Construction, was it? And Bryan was a contractor for this company, and we had the dot-com bust. And so being a programmer in computers and stuff, there was no work, and so I'm taking any work I can get my hands on. And I ended up working for this construction company that Bryan did contract work for. And so we worked for that company for about 2 years. I think Nancy and I, we worked for that and several other people. And they ran that company into the ground, and they stiffed Bryan for a whole lot of money. But after that was over, I couldn't find work. I am not a roofer, and I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not big. I'm not. And he said he invited me to come and work for him for pay. And then when that came to an end, Bryan is the kind of person that he will give you the sweaty shirt off his back if you need it. Clean or sweaty, he will extend the love to you. And he's come that close several times over the years to giving me the shirt off his back when I needed it. My children loved him, so his farts, his pooting. So when my boys were growing up, he would, Bryan would frequent our house, and hang out. And so he'd lift up and my boys would just fall on the floor laughing, dying laughing. And then finally they caught on. They'd come by and, And so back and forth these guys would, have their little toots. And I've had the fortunate and unfortunate experience of sleeping in the same room with him. And one night he made the mention the next morning. He said, "Oh, I see you finally have some of your own," So one night, I was very fortunate that I got to do a lot of ministry work with Bryan. And one of the things that we would do is, people would donate computers to us, and I would tear them down, rebuild them into working computers, and then he and we would go to the various reservations and give them out to the kids for school and stuff. And one night we're sitting in a Denny's, and I guess maybe the other booth wasn't open. There wasn't a booth there because the games were there. And so probably where the second table is where the door is for people to come in. And so this elderly couple, as they're walking in, Bryan lifts up a cheek and just rips this loud, boisterous fart. And the lady looks at him and he goes, and I'm like, why? What are you talking about? That wasn't me. But, she was just like, and they don't look like they wanted to leave, but they went in the opposite direction. But, I'll say this about Bryan. One of his scriptures was Psalm 116:15. And I'll leave you with this. When I didn't find out that he had passed until after the fact. And so I heard how it went down, how everything went. And, they offered him some additional life-saving ability. And he said no, he didn't want it. And so he knew that his time was very, very close. And Psalm 116:15 says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." So what does that look like? When one of God's people dies, in the beginning of the movie Gladiator, you see Russell Crowe. He's walking through the field with the wheat slightly blowing, right? And you see this door way off in the future, a couple hundred feet away. And you see his hand just kind of going through the wheat as he's walking to it. And so then at the end of the movie, he's finally passed away. His whole story has gone through, and now you see why he's there walking through that field. And when he gets to that door and he opens up that door, and there's his family. And it's just like that for us. He's like, once we pass away, God is there behind that door waiting. And we open that door, and there he is. "Bryan, I have been waiting for you for so long." And it's that way for each one of us. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. And he's waiting for each one of us, but in our time. Bryan knew that was waiting for him. He loved God. He loved Christ. He loved to serve Christ. I was very fortunate that I got to do a lot of service with him. I got to spend a lot of time. When he would do ministry and he would get called on to do sermons, he would call me and we would talk about his sermons and he would share them with me. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, now I look back and what a blessing. Because Bryan's touch reached around the globe in every direction not just north, east, west, and south, but northeast, southwest, every direction. His hands has touched people, even in remote parts of the country. I've heard of the stories of you guys traveling together and ministering to people and doing stuff in these long boat rides. And he tells me, man, I was so sore sitting on that piece of wood just for a seat, and But, Bryan was a character, but of all things, even though he was a prankster and he was a jokester, he loved God and he loved Christ. And he is there now, enjoying and reaping the benefits of loving Christ. And so I just want to end with that, he loved his friends, he loved people, he loved to serve. That was his passion. His passion was serving people. And he loved to give. He gave to me. I have a few possessions that he's given me over the years. And now, they're precious to me. Bryan was precious to me. His family, his son was precious to me. Adam and I, man, you give us some instruments, musical instruments, and you're not going to see us for a while. And Judy, I love his family. And I'm honored, to have known Bryan and to have been a part of his life. And Lamar, like you said, I know, and it's not easy becoming a part of his circle. I didn't try to get into his circle, but it worked out that way, that we clicked and we were good. And hanging out with Bryan was a beautiful thing, and he's done a lot of good for a lot of people, and he's done a lot of good for me and my family. So God bless you guys. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And Adam, God bless you guys. Thank you guys.
Gina? Come on down. All right? No pressure? Yeah. I see there's a knocked out baby over there, but Mondo, Cindy, you want to come down? Cindy, you come up.
Hi, my name's Mondo. This is Olivia. This is my wife Cindy. My son Ben sitting over there. So I wasn't gonna say anything. I think I've pretty much what Bryan meant to me. He was a mentor. He taught me a lot about myself. It's like the gentleman was saying, you're interacting with Bryan, he teaches you who you are. Like holding the mirror up to you. And I learned a lot about myself. I thought I was a confident person before I met him. And I used to maybe portray myself that way. But he taught me that it wasn't what I was portraying. It's who I really was. That where my real confidence lied. And he taught me a lot. I knew him for a long time. Met him when I was about 15. He helped me realize my worth ethic, but also my worth as a young man at the time and as a man as I grew up. So I really miss him. I'm really honor to be part of, his family. And this is really amazing to see everybody here. I know that he's touched everybody in a positive way. He has his ways, he had his ways, and he was really rough around the edges. Maybe overall just a rough guy, but he was just full of love, and like I said, I'm gonna miss him dearly, and but I'm proud that I was part of his life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mondo. Alvino.
Okay, do yat just the national do touchy need a basis chin can you on it as a chado to behind it as another. My name is Alvino Sandoval. I'm from Alamo, Navajo, which is about 2.5 hours southwest from Albuquerque. And Bryan was, by clan, probably my big brother, because my first primary clan is I'm Apache. I'm born for the Red Running Into Water people clan. And my maternal grandparents are Towering House. My paternal grandparents are of the Edge of the Water people. My father is just west of, from just the community west of here. It's Tohajili, not Tohajili, it's Tohajili. Formerly Canancito, but they went back to its original name. But I want to say today to the family that earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. And it's a process. I went through this whole grief process, and it never goes away. You just have to learn to live with the circumstances. But God is the present help in a time of sorrow, in a time of need, and take that encouragement with you. And so I met Bryan by way of Judy. We worked together. I worked for Judy first before I worked at Epics, when Judy had the national grant, and then after that I worked for Epics, and there Jeanette is here with me as well. And we all sort of built this camaraderie, and it's sort of funny because we at the beginning. What was supposed to have been a fundraising powwow, at last minute was thrown into our hands, and between the three of us, we were like, we don't know what we're doing. So we're just trying to pull bits and pieces of resources of how to run a powwow. Lo and behold, we survived. We were okay. And then the year after that is when we were introduced to Bryan and allowing him to observe and assist, basically really assist and give us a lot of guidance. And through the years, as we've sponsored our powwow, which then became an what do you call it? Yeah. It was no longer a fundraising. Nonetheless, with his experience and his guidance and a lot of course, with his jokes in between, we learned, and our powwow evolved, and it became one of the well-attended. I at least in my view, was next to the gathering. Hey. But all of it really became because of his guidance to Ronaldo, and also to the staff and to the team, of how to be. It was all about efficacy. And a lot of it also really came with a lot of teaching and respect as well. And so that's been our blessing. And so even being here today, I can say that I'm blessed. I'm blessed because I know that God, today my scripture, my reading, I think it was 1 Timothy 3:16, I think it was. And it talks about the mysteries of the gospel, the mystery of Christ. And basically just talks about the journey step by step, and it was just straightforward. that he came in his flesh through his son Jesus Christ. His purpose was to preach, to spread the gospel, and it talked about his life, death, and resurrection and second coming. And it was just straightforward. But I pondered on the word of the mysteries, because God does things in mysterious ways, and there's always purpose in it. And if you have that ability to discern, when it happens, your mind begins to click, chick, click, chick, click, chick. So today, as well, I was here, I was like, wow, isn't God amazing? Judy here, and then his son. Basically, when I turned to look at his son to be introduced, it was like, Bryan. Just a mirror image of him in his regalia. And so I felt his presence even here amongst us, and his ability to be around us and embrace us. But also then Leah shows up, and I was like, what's she doing here? But Leah and I were also students at UNM together. We took some linguistic courses. She passed, I failed. No, I'm just teasing. Be careful, she knows the Nebuzat too. But her and I were part of this group taking Navajo language courses in Navajo linguistics. And then so I was like, wow, there were people here that I knew that there was those connections. And then Laura and I've known her since, way back when. I don't want to age myself, but gosh, way back when in Tohajiles, when we first met, and the work that she's done throughout the years, and we've been able to connect. And then her husband is my Facebook friend, and I was keeping up about this ministry, and I was like, oh, the connection there. And so all of this, just the whole connection, I was like, thank you, God. You're making things make much more sense. That not only am I here amongst friends and family, but extension to that as well. And that he does things that way. And if it had not been for this gathering, and I think God using Bryan in that way to bring many of us together and to begin to extend our relationships. We may not hang out ever again to have popcorn or pizza, but just by remembering, hey, I remember that guy, going back to our different places, Los Angeles, Oregon, Washington, Alamo, Arizona, wherever you journeyed from, we'll all have a piece of each other from today, all because of our gathering and remembering the work that God has purpose in Bryan. And it's through that ministry, even in his absence, he continues to operate in ministry, and that's through today's gathering. So take that, and I take that back with me. So God bless each and every one of you. Pray my strength, and continue to pray for me as I do for you as well. God bless y'all.
Thank you, Albino. Can I call out Jeanette? All right.
Not very much to say. I think Elvina said it quite well. Judy, Elvina, and I go back and all work together, and Bryan came into our lives through the powwow. And believe you me, he was a real critic as far as powwow is concerned. So, I think we learned through the years of powwow etiquette. And as Elvina mentioned, we took baby steps in doing our powwows, but eventually I think we got it. So, yeah, and we made shells for epics, and so we all had shells. So we didn't have to go borrow them. Thank you. Yeah, I felt the same way as Elvina when I saw Adam. I know that Judy talked about her nephew, but I did not vision that he's an image of his father in every way.
The bad ways too. Thanks. You know, if I was though, there's nothing in the scriptures against being gassy. That's right. Don and Xenia? Are they still here? Going once? All right. How about Danton and Brenda? Are they here? All right. Albert. Come on down. Aaron, you too.
My name's Albert. I met Brightcloud through meeting his son, working together at UPS. Just want to say that what Adam means to me is his community, and that's an extension of what Brightcloud gave to him, an embracement, and also with just how Nancy raised a beautiful man. So I want to say thank you.
My name is Erin. I met Brightcloud through Adam as well, and it's been a really enlightening day today to get to know him as a person that, again, like everyone wanted to be in his circle, and not fully experiencing that myself. But when we did talk, it was always a lesson being learned about culture and, again, community and color and story. And it helped me, it enriched my personal knowledge, because at the time I was a student of art history, and one of my classes was Indigenous Studies, and I shared with him what I was learning, and he put everything in context for me. So it was really, I'm like, wow, I just felt so lucky to have almost a first-hand account of what I was learning to, how to apply to even today. So I'm really grateful for that, and I'm also grateful for today and everyone sharing a piece of what he gave to everybody. So thank you.
Dan and Brenda are back? All right.
Hello. My name is Brenda, and this is my husband, Danton. I met him through Adam, of course, and I just wanted to parrot what most people said. I wanted to use the word authentic, and I wanted to say someone who was truly himself, you know? I thought it was really impressive that I get to be amongst a huge family from around the world. I might not know you guys, but I feel so much love and acceptance. I feel like this is the ultimate celebration of a person who had a living legacy, right? Like someone who truly got to live out his legacy and continue a legacy with all of us. Thank you guys.
I heard that Don and Zena are back in the house. I can see you.
I just want to say thank you. I'm happy to be here. Koyana.
All right. Right when I was about to thank the sound guy. Leah and Bryan, please come up if you feel like being behind the mic. If not, we have a gift for you. What are you doing again, Elaine?
Hi, I'm Leah Grover. This is my husband, Bryan Grover, the awesome audiovisual man for tonight. Let's give him a big hand. So one time I met Bryan Brightcloud, I believe it was Wachoni Family Camp 2017. It might have been right after his first stroke. I think he was in a wheelchair and there was a blanket offering time, and you know, everyone, or many people were bringing up some money and just shaking his hand, saying hello, and that's what I did, and he gave a nod. So that was the only time I met him. But I did watch the Vimeo presentation he did about a decade ago at Nate's that they had just posted recently. And in there, the thing that struck me a lot was the part where he talked about something to the gist of, why is it just white European males that are making all the theology? Indigenous people need to self-theologize. And I thought, man, that is excellent. So I'm saying that to all the indigenous people here. Make some of that. I want to see it.
Good.
Thanks so much, you guys. Neil and Diane. It's on the list. The list don't lie.
Sorry.
I just want to maybe reiterate everything you all have said, that sense of family and sense of community and sense of love and cherish. And Judy's my dear friend. Kathy as well stepped in. I just feel like being here, asking my husband, hey, I need to go to New Mexico. So we came from Oregon. But just really super quick, Bryan said a prayer for me many, many, many years ago. And probably never forgot it. But it also just gave me hope for a future, right? The scripture says, I give you a hope. And so he just sent me back to the cross. He didn't say anything really profound except for one that had already said it. He sent me back to the Word, back to the cross. And so we leave here today really full, and just thank you for being just that really welcoming and warm people that surrounded Bryan and family. And we love you all, and thank you so much for letting us join in a really beautiful story.
Oh, the riffraff are here. Yeah. Nick and Alex. Come on down.
Hi everyone. I'm real good friends with Adam, and I got to meet Brightcloud through him. And it was kind of the same thing when I first met him. He wouldn't look at me. But over the years, like, he started to acknowledge me, and we got to talk a little bit. And it's good to see the love. You could tell, he touched everyone, and it's real nice. One story I have about Brightcloud is I stayed in his room one time. This was when Adam was living in Arizona, and the next time I saw him, he just looked at me and asked, "Did you fart in my bed?" And I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Good." So, yeah, it was good to know him. And, I won't ever forget him.
All right, Blake.
Testing. It's weird to hear your own voice. All right, I don't know where to begin. Bryan was probably one of the funniest guys I've ever known. I owe like a lot of my personality traits to Bryan. I spent more time with Bryan driving around, not talking, than I did with anybody else. Like more than my mom, more than even Adam. Cause Bryan, even when he had his roofing business, for a while, and a lot of times we weren't working, I guess if I was on summer vacation, we just hung out basically all day. And but he had like a routine. He was very routine oriented. So it was like, we're gonna go to the bank at like 6 a.m, pick up some cash. We're gonna go here, get some donuts, get some coffee, and then we're gonna go to this job site, say what's up, go there, spend like an hour driving somewhere, and spend 5 minutes just looking at it, saying what's up to the guys, take a dump, and then like in the person's house or something, and then leave. And then we'd go get lunch. Are you hungry? I don't know. Bryan's been mad at me once, but he was not like he got angry at things, but he never beat me, at least in a way that wasn't funny, I remember there was one time, well, he's gone now, you can't charge him with anything. I don't know, I got lots of stories about the guy. A lot of times when I try to think of a story, I can't really, I get my brain gets foggy, there's too much stuff to try to grab onto, but I got one. And this is not just like one story really, it's like something that happened like every day. But he'd be driving around somewhere, and he was buddies with like this guy, I think his name was Brad Bachman. And he owned this dealership, and he'd hook us up with buffalo meat, I think that was the deal, yeah. So every time we served burgers, it was because of that guy. And he'd hook Bryan up with like deals on cars and stuff. So I remember he had this Mercury Mountaineer, which Mercury is like a Ford, like Canadian kind of thing. It was cool, right? But it was an awesome car. We drove everywhere in that thing. But anyways, point is, right? So he had like it was high tech for the time. So you had like all your electronic controls on the left arm. So you could lock the doors in the back. You could roll down all the windows, which was kind of fancy when I was a kid, you know. And one feature on there is that you could lock the windows so they couldn't roll them down or roll them up. So what he'd do is you'd be driving around and the guy like only pooped like every like 4 days. So like, man, like there was some times where his gas was so stinky and so foul and so wet sounding, you know. And there's this one time we're driving around and we're like on the freeway or something. And probably listening to the Beatles or something. We listened to the same album over and over and over. You'd have like 2 cassettes in there, and you just listen to them over and over until they wore out, and then switch them out. But anyways, he'd fart, and then he'd roll up his window. He'd fart, and then he'd crack yours. He'd crack your window just a little bit, and then he'd lock it. And then he'd lock the doors, so you couldn't open the door. You couldn't roll down the window. You couldn't roll it up. So he'd do that deliberately so that his fart smell would be sucked over to you. And he'd think this was hilarious. There was this one time, we were up in Oregon or something. I was visiting Adam when he was getting his PhD up there at Portland State University. And I'm not sure what the story was. But anyways, we were up there grabbing McDonald's. I think we were like on our way to drop off Bryan at the airport. We were kind of just like taking up some time. And I've never seen Bryan embarrassed either until this one day. We're eating McDonald's, we're sitting, and it's like basically silent in there. They're not really playing music very loud, and there's only like one other person in the whole McDonald's. And it's just a typical lunch we're all just having together. It's just me, Bryan, and Adam. And he was sitting, I think, it was like this seat with like a booth that went along the whole wall. And then there was like just 2 chairs on the other side of this table. And me and Adam, I think, were sitting on the chair side. But Bryan did this thing all the time that he'd drop things on the floor if you were in a restaurant, you know, and he'd reach over to pick it up, you know. And this time, he drops like a napkin or something on the floor, very casually. You wouldn't have known, right, that he did it on purpose. And then he'd reach over to pick it up, and this time he farted so loud, like it vibrated the whole chair, right? And there was only one other person in there, and it was dead silent. And I remember he got so embarrassed, like his whole face was red, and he was chuckling, like kind of covering his face, you know? So funny. I remember there was this other time. There's like as far as fart stuff, like I could go on and on. There was this one time, I think it was my birthday or something. We went to this Italian restaurant, and I never knew that I was lactose intolerant, but I loved pizza. Bryan would buy me pizza every day. Like, what are we gonna eat? You know, it's like McDonald's breakfast, and then it was like Pizza Hut or McDonald's for lunch, and then like sometimes it would be KFC too, but sometimes we'd switch it up, you know, of course with like Burger King, Carl's Jr., and all the other major food groups, you know? And I remember anyways, it's my birthday, we're at this Italian restaurant, and I ate like a bunch of pizza, and then I ate a bunch of like this vanilla ice cream for dessert. Yeah. And I'm not sure if he was even in the car. No, he wasn't in there. But it was me and my best friend, Anthony, who unfortunately he couldn't come today. He's in the military right now. I forget what it's called, but he's in the Marines. He's in San Diego. I'm not sure what the story is, but we wish he was here. At any rate, so Bryan farts, right? We're driving home after dinner. Bryan farts in the front seat, and then I think Anthony farts. And then, so I fart, and then I tried to fart, like, louder than both of them. And I shit my pants. and then, well, I was, like, 8 years old, right? 8 years old, and then we had to go to a Ralph's so I could go to a bathroom and throw my underwear away. Yeah. Man. All right. I think like, I don't know. Some of my most fond memories, right, are... Hey, I'm not done. Some of my most fond memories are just sitting with Bryan. I feel like I've had like a handful of like quote unquote longer conversations with the guy, but you know, like I feel like I exchanged more with him in just silence. You know, like on our long drives home, where he'd drive like 40 minutes to drop me off at my mom's house. And we just do like Simpson trivias. He had like a million questions to ask me, just stored in the back of his head. And he'd be like, who played, or who was the name of this guy in this scene, or something like that, you know? But he always had a question. He was always thinking about stuff. As I got older and I started to become more like self-aware and like start studying people, like I tried to interrogate Bryan and try to like figure him out, you know, because I could never figure out like who like he was deep beneath like this shell, right? Like I mean, the guy like had really really thick skin, you know, so you never got to really touch the emotional side of Bryan, right? Or communicate with it, you know, at least directly. And I try to ask him questions, and he'd always avoid anything sweet or emotional or like emotionally vulnerable. He'd always divert the attention. He'd fart. He'd turn something on the radio. He'd bring something up and never talk about it. And I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I'll miss Bryan. You know, I think he feels like this space, even when he's quiet. You know, he's flatulating, he's joking, he's antagonizing you, he's hitting you, he takes up a lot of space. You know, he calls you like 10 times, 15 times a day. You know, and he'll tell you the same stories. You know, and he'll be like, wait, but I forgot this part. So I'm gonna start at the beginning of the story and then include like this one small part. I don't know. I think I owe a lot to like who I am and like how I handle myself to other people, and like I don't know. I owe everything to that guy. So, thank you.
All right, Mom, you want to close this out? Please, no more. I can't handle any more stories south of the border, you know?
I think Blake stopped you on the funny thing. Well, I don't usually get up and talk in front of people, but the one thing I think that today has brought to the table is that there was many faces of Bryan, and that he touched many people's lives in a lot of different ways. And one of his favorite movies, when I was thinking about this day, he loved a movie that was made in 1964, and it was Tony Randall. And I don't know if Blake remembers this, but I hope Adam does. And it was The Seven Faces of Dr. Lau. And he loved that movie. And I thought, listening to everyone talk today, there was many faces of Bryan. You know, he was a husband, he was a father, he was an uncle, he was a friend. Blake's right, he was an antagonist. He was a prankster and a jokester. And it's true that he didn't always say he loved you, but he showed it. I can remember, what year was the earthquake? 1994, down in Northridge, California, and his apartment, it was just like barely hanging on, you know, it was just barely there. And we were in Selmar, and, you know, everything had crashed, all the dishes had flown around, the entertainment center came down, and we were all outside and everyone was scared, and we had this big golden retriever, and we're all out down in the grass. And the gas mains had blown up, and the brick walls had come down, and poles had emptied. And I look out, and coming across the lawn, you know, he had made his way from Northridge all the way to Selmar, which was about 15 miles. He borrowed someone's truck, and he made his way to us. And he always showed up, and he was a servant, and he would give himself to you. He would spend his last dollar on people, and he didn't always have anything, but he gave even when he didn't have anything, because he loved everyone. And his favorite thing to do was always to bring a cooler with all the sodas and waters, and he treated the guys that worked for him as roofers, and everybody, he treated them just like they were the most important person, to bless them. And it's true, he didn't always talk to everybody. He didn't always talk to me either, so don't feel so bad. And I lived with him, so I met Bryan when I was very young, and I have lots of stories about farting also, but I won't tell them since Blake told them so well. But he was very special, and there's very many different aspects of Bryan that I think has touched all of you in all different ways. So he is definitely a blessing to all of us.
All right. Jonathan Miracle started us out, it was like 10 hours ago. And so he's going to take us out, story. And then after that, I think if anybody still wants to hang, we'll do a little bit of cleanup, casing the joint and stuff. And then a few of us are going to move over to Frontiers. Is that right, Casey?
Or hang out here.
Or hang out here.
There are bands set up here already.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks, man. All right, take a look.
We call it a fart sack, somebody who farts a lot. Up in Canada, that's what we call, if the kids are, we call them little fart sacks. So I guess Bryan was the ultimate king fart sack. Yeah, I don't know, there was a funny one. Ian got the one there where he laid in the park in the dog poop. And he really did it up good. He got all the angles and everything on it. That was really cool. But I was at a big gathering, and Richard was speaking. Richard was to be the speaker, and Bryan was to introduce Richard. And I was standing at the very back. There's like a banister going around behind all the chairs, right? And so I'm just casually standing there listening to Bryan introducing Richard, and I'm standing beside the pastor of the church. And so we're standing there, and Bryan's just finishing up what he's saying. He says, so Richard's going to be speaking for a while, and at the very end, he's going to have a little T&A. And he goes, oh, I mean Q&A. And the pastor standing beside me just slowly goes, did he really say what I think he just said? I said, oh yeah. Yeah, he did. He goes, we got to deal with this guy. I said, oh, go for it. I was like, so, just constantly that stuff was happening all the time when you hung out with him. And, I just wanted to say a couple things about Dee Tony. Dee, I didn't get to say it earlier, but this lady has just been so awesome over the years. And Bryan and I and Dee and my band, we traveled all over Nevada and all over California doing stuff together. And so I understand the whole thing about all you guys have been talking, but we were at closed and confined places with him for hours on end. So then rather than to hate him, we just decided to join him, and so we all got into the warfare in the closed-in. So anyway, Dee, you are a great inspiration to us. You helped to bring us together. You helped to help us to mold our relationships. And, I think there's a lot of richness in here. A lot of people have been affected. And, we found all the good that we could mine out of Bryan today. We found everything, and we found some of the other stuff, the shady stuff too. But yeah, I mean, he had some great friends, and I'm honored to be pals with you guys, and I'm so happy I was able to make my way down here to be with you. And love is what binds us together. Love is what makes us strong. It's those cords of love that can't be broken that makes the difference, so that we can support one another through all the thick and thin and the hard times. And so just thanks for letting me be a part of it with you guys, and I hope to see you guys some more. I'm going to be doing a concert on Monday for the opening of Good Medicine Way. And so I'll be playing most of the songs off the new album, and I'll be playing a lot of good old Broken Walls, good oldies, I guess you'd say. I mean, it's been around for a while. 1998, I released the first album. And I've released like 17 albums since then. So there's a lot of music there. Anyway, thank you so much, you guys, for putting it on. I want to say just another thanks to you and all the work you've done, Bryan. You are an amazing blessing to Casey Church's vision. Yeah. So, yeah, you really. Everybody needs to have a Bryan. Yeah. God bless you guys.
Just for a shameless plug, Jonathan's got a bunch of CDs up here to buy.
Yeah, sure.
I have no shame. Buy this dude's CDs. Before we close it out, this is like the. Is there anybody on the?
No, we're good there.
Is there anybody in this room that wasn't on that list? I took that list from the RSVP thing from, we had sent it out. So please don't feel offended if your name wasn't on that list. But we do want to give this time for anybody else that has anything. What about you, man? No? All right.
What about you?
I don't have anything to say. I've said it all. You don't want to hear any more fart stories? I don't want to tell them. Just throw your hand up if you want to take last chance. Going once. Going twice. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bryan Brightcloud Memorial 2022. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll either hang out here or we'll, if there's enough of us that want to mosey on over. Bryan told me that Frontiers is the only place that's open past like 8 or past 10? Yeah. Past 8. But stick around, hang out with us, fellowship with us, tell some of those stories that you didn't want to tell on the mic. And thank you so much, y'all. We love you a lot.